Good morning everyone. Welcome to Market Voice. In this series, many a times, under many instances, we have spoken about limited resources. We, not just as retail investors, even institutional investors or the big time players are also constrained with limited resources. So the limitness of the resources is not just a constraint or a unique factor to be considered only by the small players. It is the universal truth that no matter at what scale you are playing, your resources at any given point of time will be kind of limited only. It could be in terms of capital, it could be in terms of experience, it could be in terms of information, it could be in terms of skills or tools, or it might so happen many a times the market itself is not having enough depth for you to deploy all of your resources. So this limited resources is one of the very important factor that needs to be considered in any activity, and more so in trading. When it comes to war, we all know how much of resources the war can eat away of the country. We know any country waging a war, it will deplete lot of natural wealth, lot of man power, and also treasury expenses. So any country, when it is going for a war, it will definitely think of the kind of resources that they are having, and also the opponent's powers or his abilities or his resources that are available for him to fight the war. In the recent case, we have seen Russia and Ukraine waging the war. Russia maybe somewhere in their calculations might have gone wrong in terms of the resources that they estimated of the opponent or Ukraine's resources. Russia thought we are a bigger country with lot more resources in terms of ammunitions, in terms of treasury, but it has dragged on for more than a year now, and Ukraine has not given up their spirits, has, in spite of so much of destruction in that country, they are still putting up a brave face, giving all of it, whatever is there with them, for the sake of protecting their country. So you can see very high spirits is also one of the very good resources. It's very, very important. In one of the Market Voice video, while talking of understanding the importance of time and timing, we discussed about Napoleon's war, how all of his men started becoming exhausted with a very continuous war. So if you have to have a long range wars, then you need to have that much more resources, and if those resources doesn't come quickly, or if those resources are not being able to produce within your own countries, then it becomes a big problem. So any war strategist very clearly understands the importance of resources that he is going to deploy for his activity, which is waging of war. Very similarly, we in our trading activities also have to be aware of our resources, and we should know how much of resources we need to deploy for what kind of trading activity. Very, very important. And with this respect, what does SunTzu in his book Art of War talks about the resource? Here in the second chapter, he says, the skillful soldier does not raise a second levy, neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. 8th treaty in his second chapter, The Waging of War, what he says, the skillful soldier does not raise a second levy, neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice? What he says, or in what context we need to understand? A good warrior or a good king who is going for a warfare, he will not increase the taxes back home. He will not burden the expense of war on his citizens. Generally what happens, whenever there is a war, the government is forced to increase a lot of taxes on the common man to feed the war. But here SunTzu very clearly says, a good soldier does not raise a second levy, neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. Very important. We should not withdraw too much of capital or resources from some other source for doing our trading activities. If you want to go ahead with trading activities, plan for it beforehand and do not pull out lot of money from your other savings or other sources. Start off small, start off in a limited way. Do not burden your family wealth, or do not pull too much of family wealth and put it into the activity called as trading or even investing. Very important. And the second point that he says, they don't bring war material with you, don't bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy. Thus the army will have food enough for its needs. Here what he says, forage on the enemy. See, two things we need to understand here. One, do not put too much of capital, start off small. And second, when SunTzu talks of foraging on the enemy, what does he say? He is telling, when you go to the warfare, at the enemy's front there are resources, right? When you capture the enemy, you are capturing his resources also. Use them. Do not burden your own people back home with heavy taxes. Instead, go ahead, keep conquering the lands, keep taking those resources and deploying back for your furthering of your war activity. Very similarly, here we can map the same analogy to our trading activity in terms of profits generated through trading. 1. Come with limited capital, not too much of capital which is taken from somewhere else. So do not over leverage somewhere else, do not take too much of loan somewhere else and then don't put that capital into trading activity. Point number 1. Or even if you are bringing your own capital, do not put everything into the trading activity. Point number 2. And thirdly and most importantly, with limited capital when you start off and when you start making some small profits, put maximum of those profits back into the business itself. Do not take the profits home initially at least. If you make 10%, plow back 8% of your profits into the trading activities, keep 2% as buffer. When you make 20% profits, plow back 15% of the profits into the business itself, keep 5% as buffer. At least in the initial stages, deploy the profits back into the trading activity. That will stop you from bringing the capital from home. This is a very, very important lesson most of us traders we have to learn. Many a times we have seen people borrowing heavily and putting in stock market hoping something will happen, they can become rich overnight and they can repay the loan without much damage. But the pressure of repayment, the pressure of interest burden will act upon your psyche very badly and you will end up making more mistakes in your trading activities. Your trading decisions will be influenced by the factors which it should not be influenced with. Your trading decisions more or less should always at any given point of time should be influenced only with the trading setup, irrespective of what other commitments you have behind the scene. We can't come to the market today because like we need to make a EMI payment tomorrow. We need to come to the market today if there is a buy or sell setup today in the market. So with limited capital, start off with the limited capital, make some small profits, and whatever small profits you are making, deploy the larger portions of the profits back into the activity, so that like you are only deploying back what you have earned. Tomorrow if you end up losing that, you would have at least like not lost too much of capital, you would have lost the profits that is made, one, and secondly, yes, you would have lost on time. Still, when it comes to money and time, it is okay if you have lost time and if you are able to save some money, because when you have spent that time, it would have been repaid to you in some other way in terms of the learnings, so it wouldn't have gone waste. Anything spent on learning, any time spent on that will never go waste. So today's important aspect is start off with small capital or limited capital and not having leveraged elsewhere. You want to take leverage as much as possible, as much your setup suggests in the market, you can take the leverage here, but do not bring the capital itself as a leverage capital, one, and two, whenever you make profits, whatever is the profits, larger portions of the profits, flow it back into the markets, at least in the initial stages, and at the later stages you can flowing back, you can reduce it, so that you are like comfortably sitting on a decent capital base over a period of predefined time, maybe 2 years or 3 years or whatever. So that is with respect to today's topic on what is the capital to be used and how to handle the profits. Let us discuss more with more topics tomorrow. Until then, Om Swasti.